Society, Environment, and the Sea, Reading the Currents. Day 4, August 4th, 2014. We crossed the Puget Sound this morning to enter the Lake Washington Ship Canal. After passing through the Ballard Lock, we made our way to Fisherman's Terminal. In last night's lecture, we discussed cultural markers and discovered that often the people with the most influence in a region control the vast majority of visible cultural markers, essentially controlling the message of the region's cultural past and present. Now at Fisherman's Terminal, our assignment was to explore the surrounding area on foot and look for these visible markers. Some were obvious, others were less obvious. We talked to commercial fishermen and recreational boaters around the terminal to find out what we could about the relationship between these differing cultures. Brian divided our group to approach a photography assignment in two different ways. Lauren and I were to take an art photography approach, while Kenny, Valentina, and Joe took a photojournalistic approach. After returning to the boat, we continued along the canal into the fresh water of Lake Union and tied up in South Lake Union Park beside the Museum of History and Industry. We had a short break before our next lecture, so a swim in the warmer lake water was just the thing to cool off on a hot day. Shipwright Brian Johnson, a former commercial fisherman, and Shannon Fitzgerald from the Alaska Fisheries Science Center, National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and Northwest Seaport came aboard the commencement. Together they told two sides of the same story of the commercial fishing industry. We found that ultimately they were on the same page with regards to conservation and the sustainability of coastal fishing communities. After we enjoyed a grilled salmon dinner prepared by Mark, we shared a selection of the images from the afternoon's photo walk in Fisherman's Terminal. Brian provided critique of the images and then also shared some photos he had taken today as further examples of photojournalistic and fine art approaches on a given subject. Those of us who had finished our reading headed out into town, while others remained behind to catch up before tomorrow. Day 5, August 5th, 2014. We rose at 7 this morning and headed out to Seattle on foot with this morning's three-part assignment. First, we set out to discover the entrepreneurial spirit and food culture of Seattle through the lens of the Pike Place Market established in 1907.
TT for Eric! TT for Eric!
Second, we were to look for subjects to photograph in support of our final photo essay project. Lastly, we worked together to plan tomorrow's meals and purchase all of the necessary ingredients. Whenever possible, we focus on locally grown foods. Upon returning to the commencement for a salmon taco lunch that Mike had prepared for us, we discussed our discoveries on the aft deck. After lunch, we were joined by Master Carver Sadutz of the Center for Wooden Boats. He came from his native tribe of Haida in southeast Alaska to Seattle a decade ago to educate the local youth about the history and culture of his people, and shared with us his views on the changes that have taken place in the region. Next, we were joined by Tara McCauley, Education and Youth Programs Manager at the Museum of History and Industry. She gave us a tour of the museum, built right on the edge of the lake. Heron Scott, Executive Director of the Virginia 5 Foundation, took us aboard the historic Virginia 5 steam ferry for a behind-the-scenes look at this 88-year-old vessel which carried passengers between Tacoma and Seattle before becoming a part of the museum. Brian Johnson then gave us a tour of the Shifter Light Boat, also a part of the museum. Brian is in the process of refurbishing the main deck of this historic 110-year-old vessel, built during the peak of the Industrial Revolution. We returned to the commencement for an evening paddle with Sadutz aboard his 40-foot log canoe made of a 776-year-old red cedar tree. Join us tomorrow as we depart Lake Union bright and early, headed for Port Townsend.